Religion is not separate from life. Religion is that which infuses and informs and inspires our life. It's our religions that give us our values, our ethics, our priorities, our way of understanding ourselves, the universe, our place in the universe, our place in communities. So it goes without saying that religion, religious leaders must be involved in the unfolding of life in our communities, in our nations, in our world, because these are the very core basic religious precepts. So whether you're looking at issues of violence, of war, of crime, of harm, of injustice, of inequality, of oppression, of environmental destruction, of poverty, of hunger, of all of these social ills and social evils that face our world today, our religions have very clear tenets that tell us how to live in nonviolence, in compassion, in generosity, in caring, in sharing, in protecting and preserving and honoring the sacred humanity in all and the sacred creation. The Hindu tradition, for example, teaches us that we've been created not just by the Creator, but of the Creator, which means by definition that the creation itself, every human being, of every race, of every religion, of every color, of every creed, of every culture, is divine, which means we have to protect it, we have to preserve it, we have to serve it, and not only human beings, but all beings, all of creation, from all the animal species to every drop of water, to every blade of grass, to every tree, every mountain. It has all been created of the Creator. And so it is sacred. So religion and faith must be that continues to guide us, to inspire us, to inform us, to teach us how do we think, how do we act, how do we live, how do we choose, what are the right ways of living from the moment we wake up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep at night. Religions are not only that teach us how to attain heaven or liberation after we die, but actually how to attain heaven right here on earth, and how to create heaven right here on earth, not only for us, but for all. The protection of our natural environment, including and especially the Amazon rainforest, is a critical issue of responsibility and duty for human beings. And to the extent that that which we deem our human responsibility and our human duty, the extent to which that is dictated and informed by our faith tradition, by our religions absolutely guide us and teach us that we have to protect it, we have to preserve it. We are here not only to worship the Creator, but to protect and preserve and serve the creation. So with regard to the rainforest specifically, there's so much that those of us who don't live in the rainforest can do to protect the rainforest. For example, the greatest contributor to the deforestation of the rainforest is actually the meat industry. The rainforest is being deforested at a staggering rate. I've heard statistics ranging from 1 acre a second to 1 acre every 3 seconds. But either way, whether you say it's 1, 1, 1, or whether you say it's 1, 1, either way, those are terrifying and tragic statistics. But why is it being deforested? In order to graze cattle that will then become hamburgers. And so when you look, for example, at animal agriculture, which in and of itself is one of the greatest contributors to global warming, to the global water shortage, to the lack of our clean water, to water pollution, to global hunger. When you look specifically at the rainforest, it's the single greatest contributor to the deforestation of the rainforest. So our religions teach us, thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt live in compassion. So even if we don't necessarily come from a religion that tells us to be compassionate toward the animals, certainly we are taught to be compassionate toward other human beings. And whether it's the indigenous communities living in the rainforests, whose homes, whose communities are being deforested and destroyed, whose livelihoods are being lost, or whether it's our starving human population in developing nations around the world who don't have food to eat. Because that grain that we grow is being cycled, not to humans, but is being cycled to livestock in order to feed the meat addiction of those who have the luxury to choose. Either way, this way of eating, this animal agriculture and meat industry, is contributing to the deforestation of the rainforest. It's contributing to the harm and exploitation that is happening to our indigenous sisters and brothers, and it is contributing to global hunger. You know, the US alone produces enough grain to feed more than 10 billion people. And yet tens of thousands of people die of starvation every single day because that grain is cycling through livestock. So specifically, if you look at the rainforest, we're dealing with the destruction of that land, that sacred land that is providing oxygen to our planet, that is absorbing carbon dioxide, that is storing so much of the planet's water, that is providing so much of the water as it respirates water back into the atmosphere. That which we need, the rainforest gives us. That which we don't want, the carbon emissions, the rainforest is absorbing. And yet, just to satisfy the taste of those who have the luxury to choose, we are deforesting it. So regardless of what your religion is, whether it's a religion like Hinduism that is anchored in vegetarianism, or any religion, it's now the time for our faith traditions to really start ensuring that people eat consciously, choose consciously, live consciously. And at this point, the only conscious decision, non-violent decision to our human sisters and brothers living today and to our future generations is to stop eating so much meat. I do believe it is achievable. I am not an expert in the policy of international food distribution, but Mahatma Gandhi said something very beautiful that I deeply believe. And he said, there is always enough for everyone's need, and there is never enough for anyone's greed. And from the statistics that I do know about, as I shared, the amount of grain that is produced, that the US itself produces enough grain to feed every single human being on the planet. And yet close to 1 billion people sleep hungry. And as I said, tens of thousands are dying of starvation every day. There is no need for anyone to sleep hungry, let alone die of hunger, when we are producing enough grain. But issues of distribution, and particularly issues of animal agriculture that are taking up so much of our planet's resources, whether it's the grain, whether it's the water. Do you know the amount of water that you use in bathing for 6 months is the same amount of water that goes into the production of 1 meal of hamburgers? Now you think we're installing, low flush things in our toilets and low flow things in our shower heads, and that's great. turning off the tap while we brush our teeth. But you'd have to literally not bathe for 6 months to offset the water usage of a meal of beef. Chicken is about 1/3. So, zero hunger? Yeah, I mean, if we're already producing enough grain to feed everybody, absolutely. But what it means is that we're going to have to change our focus, change our priorities, change our values, and that's where the role of faith comes in. Because faith says to us, you are not separate. Our bodies are separate, but we are not bodies. We are soul. We are spirit. And that soul, that spirit, that divinity that is the truth of who we are, that is one. We are one. You know, when India had the G20 presidency last year, the motto that India gave to the G20 presidency was Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which means the world is a family. And in a family, no one would dare gobble up all the food. Could you imagine sitting at a table with your sisters and brothers and somebody brings out a plate of bread? Would anyone at that table dare to take the entire plate of bread that's in the center of the table and shovel it all onto their individual plate? Of course not. We understand however much is there, it is there to be shared. And that is why our faith is so important, because it is our faith that reminds us and re-reminds us. Share, care. Those people living in Africa and India, all over the world, in developing nations, everywhere, they're not separate from you. They are your family. Those refugees, they are your family. The indigenous people, they are your family. And the choices that you make of what you eat, how you eat, because of course it's not only animal agriculture. A lot of it has to do as well with transportation. Not so much in terms of the distribution issue, but in terms of the climate change issue and the environment issue. The amount of carbon emissions from trucks that are bringing, Florida oranges to North Dakota in December. Okay, so you live in North Dakota, maybe you don't see an orange for a couple of months. It's okay. These choices that we have to make to live in alignment with nature, with Mother Earth, with our planet, and that enable us then to be agents of positive change, agents of compassion for all of our sisters and brothers around the world. These are the choices we need to make. And if it means not eating meat and eating pasta, rice, vegetables instead, bread, so that that grain can feed children who are starving, then so be it. It takes about 16 times as much grain to make meat as to make vegetarian food. So if you've got 16 pounds of grain, you can either feed that to a cow and end up at the end of the day with 1 pound of beef, or you can take those 16 pounds of grain and make 16 pounds of bread, of pasta, of rice. Now you tell me, what religion tells you that you deserve the food of 15 other people? What religion says, oh, no problem. Take your 16 pounds of grain, have your 1 pound of beef, let the other 15 people starve. Religion, faith reminds us. We are one, we are together, share, love each other, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? All of these teachings, these are not unique to one religious belief. These are core teachings of people of faith. Leave no one behind means that we live with the awareness that my life, my choices, my decisions, what I wear, what I buy, what I eat, how I live, has an impact that is a ripple impact upon the world. And there are ways of living that ensure that a few of us are able to live luxuriously, however we would like, and that everyone else is left to suffer the repercussions of our freedom. Freedom is not a license to decadence. Freedom is not a license to harm. And we should not abuse our freedom in the name of freedom to deprive others of their rights to basic life. So leave no one behind means that in my choices, I remember that the bottom line, the cost of something, for example, is not just that which is on a price tag, but it is on the impact of, for example, the land, the soil, the air, the water of the factory that produced the item that I'm purchasing. Was its waste spewed into the groundwater, into the rivers, into the air? Were the farmers who were picking the cotton of the shirt that I just bought, do they have cancer from the chemicals that were being sprayed on the farm? Do their children have birth defects? Were women and children working in sweatshops to sew this because I want more, cheaper, cheaper, cheaper? There is a cost of that which we purchase that is so much deeper and wider than the price tag. Leave no one behind means I live consciously. Every menu, every grocery store, every department store, every visit to Amazon.com, everything that I do it with the awareness of what is the impact upon my sisters and brothers around the world. What is the impact upon Mother Earth? What is the impact upon future generations? To me, it's so beautiful to see the way that the Interfaith 20 is working, because organizations have brought religious leaders together for such a long time in the name of peace, in the name of interfaith harmony. But what's happening today is that our definition of peace needs to expand. And it's no longer enough to simply say, thou shalt not kill, with guns and bombs and missiles and knives and whatever. That's the non-negotiable prerequisite. Yes, thou shalt not do those things. And yet, that's the beginning, not the end. And what Interfaith 20 is doing that I love so much is creating these fora and creating so many programs along with it that are this expanded definition of peace, that enable us to ensure that our sisters and brothers are living with access to clean water, to sanitation, to hygiene, to food, to primary medical care, to education. I mean, this is what our definition of peace needs to be today. The work of peace must include ensuring that everyone has access to these basic human rights. And yet, of course, it's not the work only of religious leaders, it's the work of policymakers, it's the role of government. And so by showing up with the G20 host countries, with policymakers, they're really bringing these core tenets of faith, of our religion, of our spirituality, into policy in a way that I think is unprecedented and really powerful and really important.